Welcome to Tuesday's TimesCast. Today, as the Obama administration announces new solar panels for the White House roof, we look at the social and environmental trade-offs of renewable energy.
These turbines, people were really excited about them on the island, and then when they finally were flipped on, some of the folks living closest to it kind of thought, well, these are a little bit noisier than we thought they were going to be.
But first, a report from Pakistan. Another NATO fuel supply convoy was attacked on Tuesday. It's the fifth attack in a week following Pakistan's decision to close the Khyber Pass, the key supply line for NATO forces in Afghanistan. Jane Perlez reports from Islamabad.
In the last 5 days, some of these trucks have been burned. It's not clear exactly who has burned them, but it's pretty clear that these trucks have been allowed to be burned as a signal of huge displeasure and anger by the Pakistani government at strikes by NATO helicopters on border posts on the Pakistan border with Afghanistan. There have been 3 or 4 such strikes in the past week, and in one of those strikes, 3 Pakistani paramilitary officers were killed. And any time a Pakistani paramilitary or soldier is killed by NATO or American forces, it shows up the huge anti-American sentiment in this country. I think this shows very clearly the fraught nature of the alliance between Pakistan and the United States. Some people question whether it is an alliance. The United States has funded Pakistan to the tune of $2 billion a year in military and increasingly in civilian aid, and they have gotten some things in return. One of the things they've gotten in return is the passage of these vital supplies to Afghanistan. Another thing they've gotten is the off-the-record permission for the drone strikes. But in many ways, Pakistan and the United States have different strategic goals, and this is becoming clearer and clearer as the Afghanistan war comes into its final phase.
And now, a first look at a story from tomorrow's business section. Tom Zeller reports from Vinyl Haven, Maine, on a town's love-hate relationship with their new wind turbines.
We got an extension cord going down to the house there. We set up our weather station over here, our sound meter right here.
Several times a week, Art Lindgren trudges into the darkness near his home to measure the sound of 3 nearby wind turbines. Mr. Lindgren and his wife Cheryl live on the island of Vinyl Haven, off the coast of Maine. The turbines were built by the Fox Islands Electric Cooperative, which is largely owned and funded by the 1,300 or so full and part-time residents here.
They wake us up at night. They're hard to go to sleep too.
Since then, the turbines have become the center of a bitter controversy that has rattled this island community and raised questions about the social costs of renewable sources of energy like wind.
We built this house in 2000. It's a project that we've waited our whole life to do. We're retired and this is it.
But for others on this rocky island, the wind project has become a genuine source of pride.
I think they look nice, and I think the majority of us like them.
The turbines are expected to produce over 11,000 megawatt hours of electricity per year.
I think it was up to $26 my power bill went down per month.
The controversy here is emblematic of the challenges that the wind industry increasingly faces as turbines are built nearby where people live.
Part of your plan has to be, well, what are we going to do with the people that it ruins their lives?
So in theory, everyone loves renewable fuels. It all sounds terrific. But you were just up in Maine on an island, and you're finding out, like we find out with all things in life, right? There's sometimes some trade-off.
These turbines, people were really excited about them on the island. They had hats, t-shirts. And then when they finally were flipped on, some of the folks living closest to it kind of thought, well, these are a little bit noisier than we thought they were going to be.
There are other power sources. I mean, solar sounds great, but it has trade-offs. We've talked about that
before.
Sure,
yeah. There's the desert tortoise, for instance, in California is greatly impacted. Its habitat is impacted by an installation of solar power there. And there's been some negotiation between environmentalists and the government and the developers of this project in sorting that out.
But hydro is one of those big alternative energy sources. It has been very debated over the years. Lately it's been looking good, but it's got a checkered history too, right?
Yeah, in fact, you were telling me about one example that you'd encountered out west, right?
Right, Hetchetchee Dam is a classic example. It caused the flooding of the beautiful Yosemite Valley and is still controversial today.
Yeah.
But there are other examples out there. I mean, it blocks fish from going up, it changes the temperature of the water, it changes the landscape. Nothing's without a cost.
Nuclear power is a classic example too. I mean, this is in an age when we're all concerned about the amount of carbon dioxide and the impacts of climate change. Nuclear power can seem like a very kind of ready solution to that because it has very few emissions. But there's another big trade-off, which is the nuclear waste, among other things. What do you do with it?
Join us again tomorrow for another edition of TimesCast.